watching. This is the Mito podcast. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Megan.
And today we have a special guest. Her name is Laura Insco, and her daughter Briley is who we're going to be talking about, right, Laura?
Yes, Miss Briley.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about Briley before we start asking you any questions.
So she is 8 months old, and she's so beautiful, so beautiful. Her eyelashes reach her eyebrows. It is insane. I wish I had her eyelashes. They're so gorgeous. But we found out she had Mito when she was 3 months old, and quite a long journey to get there, but we're taking it day by day and rolling with it. But she's developmentally delayed, so we're still not holding our head up, which is typical with Mito babies. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
So you said she was diagnosed at 3 months. What was it that caused them to start looking for Mito, or even just start looking for anything?
Our pregnancy was pretty typical. So starting out, everything was normal. I felt great, worked out every day. I had been pregnant before with Baylor, is our 3-year-old. And so I knew what to expect. And 20-week anatomy scan was perfectly fine. My husband, it was in the middle of COVID, so he actually got to go with me to that. And I ended up getting diabetes when they did the test at 25 weeks. And it come back that I had it. And I figured I probably had it because with Baylor, I only passed by 1 point. So I ended up having to do the 3-hour, failed it. It was fine. And he said, my OB was like, just take your sugars at home, change your diet. You're good. Don't need medicine. Don't have to do any of that. So that's what I did. Everything was fine. And at the 20-week scan, they said she was really small, but my son is small. So again, didn't think anything about it. And at 32 weeks, my OB said, let's go in and do a check just to make sure, see how she's growing, make sure everything's good. Since you do have diabetes, just want to be precautious, just look. And I was fine with that. I said, okay, we can do that. And so when we went in, well, I had to go by myself because of COVID. So that was a whole big thing. And during that ultrasound is when they found she had fluid on her brain. And I saw the doctor right after that ultrasound, and he said, all I can tell you is there's fluid on her brain. There's something going on up there. We're going to send you across the street to the high-risk doctor, and they're going to do their tests, do their thing, and they'll take you from there. So I said, okay. So of course I'm freaking out because that's all they told me was something was wrong with her brain. Wasn't anything. They couldn't tell me anything else. And so the next day I go see the high-risk doctor, COVID. So my husband had to sit out in the car. And yeah, so we were there for about 4 hours. They did an invasive ultrasound, asked me about 1,000 questions. And all they could tell me was she had ventricular megaly, which is fluid on the brain. And there wasn't anything they could do. They didn't know how it would affect her. They couldn't tell me anything. It was just like, this is what it is. We're going to monitor her. You'll get, ultrasounds twice a week. And that's just it. So here I am freaking out because you're left with all of the unknown. I mean, is she okay? I mean, is she going to stop, breathing and, heartbeat, everything goes through your mind. And I actually found a Facebook group about ventricular megaly, and all of their babies were fine. They lived with it. Some might have to have a shunt, but it wasn't, I felt okay because everyone else was like, don't freak out, enjoy your pregnancy. It's fine. And so they told me at the high-risk doctor, we're going to have to deliver her at a hospital that can deal with this kind of stuff. I am in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt is an hour away from us. And so everyone's heard of Vanderbilt. They're awesome at everything that they do. And so they induced me at 38 weeks. And she was only 5 pounds, 9 ounces when she was born. So IUGR was a big thing. She was going to be small. And after she was born, they did an MRI, ultrasound of her brain. Everything, was fine, stable. And they have a NICU, but then they also have a care floor. And the care floor is your next step before you go home. So they said, she's fine. She had to have a feeding tube because she couldn't eat, but they said that's typical, 38 weeks. Small, it can happen. So no alarm still. I was happy her vents were stable. Everything was great. So we were just learning how to eat. So they get to the care floor. She failed 3 hearing tests. And so they pretty much told me she was deaf, that she couldn't hear anything. And I knew she could hear stuff because I would FaceTime my husband and our son with her, and she would react to their voices. So I knew she could hear. She could not track light. She wouldn't track anything. And of course, we were learning how to eat. So, but nothing set off an alarm yet. I was just a nervous wreck. Being a NICU parent is something that, unless you experience it, you don't know. And so I drove back and forth every day. I would stay all day, come back, get Baylor and my husband situated, do it all the next day. And one day I went, and right before I left, of course, when you're hospitalized with a baby that's got medical issues, you get to know your nurses. And so my nurse that day, she said, hey, we're going to do a lactic acid on her. We're going to pull this lab. Don't really know why, because that's for cardiac babies, but we're just going to pull it. That's what they want. And in my mind, I'm like, well, they're the doctors. If that's what they want, that's what they want. And so they drew it. I come back the next day, and the doctors rounded, and they said, oh, we made a mistake, and we drew that. It was meant for the baby next door. It was not meant for Briley. Briley had passed her lactic levels. All of her NICU screens were fine, and said it got mixed up. And so it's dangerously high. Hers was an 8.9 and normal's about 2.2. And so just orders got mixed up somehow, which was insane.
Crazy.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, how does that, that does not happen at a place like Vanderbilt. They're on top of everything. So for them to say, well,
still just to have that mistake made on the best patient that you could have that mistake be made, of that specific test. Yes. That is crazy. Oh my gosh.
God was with her, and Briley had guardian angels with her. And it's so emotional to talk about, because
I have chills.
Yes,
I know, me too.
So present. Yes. And it blew me away. And I ended up, I called my husband and I said, they accidentally did this. It was not meant for her. And there was a boy next door to us. Our last names were not this close to even being the same. So there's no way they could have got us mixed up. So, but it was an 8.9, and they said, well, we're just going to send more labs off to Baylor University, which I thought was weird because I have a Baylor. So our son's name is Baylor. So I was like, okay, kind of weird too. So we're going to send it off there. We're going to figure out what's going on. Odds are we're just going to have to change her diet. So I thought, okay, we're just going to change her diet. No big deal. They didn't give me anything to worry about. They were really concerned because I couldn't figure out why her lactic level was so high. None of them had ever seen it like that before. And they're like, I don't get it. She passed her newborn screen. It's, we just randomly took one and it's like this now. I don't get it. So they were even still at a standstill, and we were just like, well, okay, we're at the best place to get answers. So fast forward, Briley learned how to eat. We went home after 28 days, and we get home. Life is typical. We still hadn't heard back from genetics on what was going on. So we just kind of took everything by stride. Everything was fine. Well, in September, she got to where she was super fussy all the time, like would cry nonstop. And I thought maybe she has colic. Maybe it's acid reflux. So I took her back to the pediatrician. We changed up the formula, went on our way, still the same thing. Well, one day she got to where she was super lethargic and was like white. And she had been whining and had just kind of, you could just tell she was just super lethargic. And I ended up calling my husband at work, and I said, we need to get somewhere now. And my thought was there was pressure on her brain, all that fluid, something was going on. And we ended up, took her to our pediatrician's office, and the ambulance service here did not have an ambulance to transport us to Vanderbilt. So they come and got us and took us to Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt did come and got Briley and took her back. And they couldn't really tell me anything, just thought she had acid reflux. And we found out they did an EEG and that she was having seizures, but they weren't presenting yet. So they were just kind of in the background, and they put her on her medicine and sent us home. And so went home with that. We were good. In October, that's when genetics called me and said, we have your results, come in. No one told me to bring my husband. They just said, it's COVID, bring one, wear your mask, everything. So me and Briley make our trip to Nashville, and we went to that appointment, and I walked in and she sat down, the doctor did, and she said, is your husband here? And I said, well, nobody told me to bring him. It's COVID rules, didn't know. And she's like, okay. She's like, you need to get him on the phone now. And I was like, well, just tell me what's going on first. And then I can tell him when I get home. Like, I'm not going to call him at work. It's fine. And she's like, no, get him on the phone. And that's when she told me Briley is diagnosed with a metabolic disorder, which is in the mitochondrial pool, and it's pyruvate dehydrogenase deficiency. And it is a mutation with the PDHA1 gene, which affects the X chromosome. And luckily with girls have two X chromosomes. So in different parts of Riley's body, one X can turn itself on and the other can turn off. So she can do some things, and then other things she might be limited to. They just couldn't really tell me. And they said, we're going to start her on a keto diet, and we're just going to go from there. So they said, we'll call you in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. We'll start that, and she'll have to stay about a week to be monitored. That's just it. So they pretty much told me, this is a diagnosis. We don't know how long she's going to live. We'll start keto next week. That's it. And so here I'm freaking out. Don't know what, your world, of course, comes to an end. You don't know. I mean, I didn't even think I heard her tell me the news. Your whole body goes numb, which I know y'all know. It's just like, you'll never forget the feeling. You're just like numb. I don't even think I retained it. And I ended up, when I got home, finding a Facebook group of different parents around the world that have this disease. And there's, I think, 300 of us in the group. And of course, we're scattered. There's some in Australia, California, Texas, everywhere. And so we're all able to ask each other questions and share experience. So I got on there and just kind of shared, hey, we got the diagnosis, and families come back and they shared pictures and told us, look, don't look at the life expectancy, look past it, and it's all going to be okay. We're here. You can ask anything. 2 days after the diagnosis, Briley started having seizures that we could see. And I was holding her one day and noticed she started to jerk. And I sent a video to our pediatrician, and she said, call the neurologist. You need to get somewhere. And I ended up calling the neurologist and sent her a video of Briley, and she ended up calling back about the time we got to the ER in Nashville and said, it could be the infantile spasms, good thing you brought her in. And we learned she has tonic-clonic seizures. And so they're not harmful to her. She'll just mainly do a little jerk. And we stayed, after we were admitted, we went ahead and did our 7 days of keto. And during that time, her seizure stopped and her lactic acid dropped to a 2.2. So it dropped. So it went from I think it was an 8.7 when they first drew, and then a 2.2 within like 3 days. So it worked for her. And ever since then, we've been in the hospital one other time for seizures. And they just got to where they were every probably 5 or 10 minutes. And they just changed her medicine, did another EEG, and upped her ratio. So when Briley's keto ratio is on point, what she needs for her body, her seizures stop. And so I know sometimes I don't think she even needs a seizure med. I think it's just getting that ratio down. But that's where we're at now. We haven't been to the hospital since right before Thanksgiving. So everything's going pretty smooth right now.
So do you actually keep her on a keto diet? How does that, I've never heard of an actual baby being on.
Yeah. So she is a powder base. So what you would go get at Walmart, we're on, it's called EllaCare. And I never even heard of that formula until that we started on it. So that's the base. And then she's on what's called Keto Vi, which is the actual keto like drink. So people can drink straws and drink it out of the actual package. But I mix that in there. And then we have what's called a microlipid, and that's her fat. And they just adjust the ratio. So she's on a high fat, low carb, and that's how her body gets the energy. And we're also on thiamine for energy, and so we also take that as a supplement, and sodium bicarb, because that level is low and usually is with kids that are on keto. So yeah, so I have to pre-make it every day. I get the recipe, mix it up. That's what she eats, and she eats by mouth, so which is really good. So yeah, we just.
How long did she have the feeding tube? And it was through the nose, correct?
Yep, through the nose, and it was for a week and a half in the NICU.
Okay.
And she wouldn't eat for the nurses, but when I would go, she would eat. And so my nurses would joke, and they were like, "It's mom's touch. Like, she knows." And so we've never had a feeding tube since. She's taken everything by mouth, which I'm completely thankful for, because a lot of babies with PDCD have feeding tubes, G tubes, all of it. So extremely thankful we're still there, and she hasn't lost the ability to swallow.
Has she had like her eyes tested again and her hearing tested again? Where is that now at 8 months?
So we've had 2 other ABRs, and she's failed them both, like bombed them, not passed at all. She had hearing aids in the beginning, and we noticed she had a shunt placed in November because pressure built up, and she was just miserable. And after the shunt, we noticed she could hear so much better. She reacts to our voices. She can hear toys, but her test suggests otherwise. And so we actually go see her audiologist next week for an actual hearing test and not an ABR. They had us do ABRs, and where there was so much fluid, which they've never been able to really see her brain because they've all the fluid. And they said, well, ABRs really aren't compatible with brainstem issues or problems, so it's not accurate. She said this happens all the time. You know, kids come in here, they fail an ABR, that have neurological problems, but can go home and parents say they hear stuff. So I know it's not accurate, so I think that's why they're going to go ahead and do the hearing test and go from there. But she can hear. And as far as her eyes, we've seen, I took her to the eye doctor at Vanderbilt, and they really couldn't tell me anything. But looking back through our group, most of these babies have what's called cortical vision impairment. And I think that's what Briley has. We go see a neurological ophthalmologist, which I didn't even know that was a thing, to get further checked out. But she still doesn't track. She'll look at something and then kind of look away and then look right back. It takes her a few minutes. She sees different colors better than others. And she does better in an environment where there's not a lot going on. So typically I put her in our bedroom where it's just kind of quieter, and she's super content.
That's so interesting that you said that, because my son, he has a mitochondrial disease, but he was also diagnosed about 6 months ago with Milan syndrome, and CVI is a big component of that many of the kids have. And I didn't even know what that was. And I know he has a pale optic nerve. And so that's something.
So does she.
Yeah, we've been trying to get into, like you said, a neurological ophthalmologist, which, you know, once again, we go to the eye doctor, but that's not enough. And so I've just been researching so much about CVI lately. And there's actually Facebook groups for CVI, and they have some pretty interesting information.
I'll have to look that up then.
Yeah, I actually literally just watched a video of kind of a symposium type thing that they did, and it showed what some children with CVI are able to see. And it just talked about their behavior and how so many things are components of their vision. Like you said, how you have to put her in your room where it's quiet.
Yeah.
If it's too much stimulus, too many things going on. It's their vision. They can't see, and it doesn't transfer the information, and they just shut down, or they have behavior issues. So that's really interesting. I just, we always talk about it being a journey, and you learn so much different stuff. It's like, that's the newest thing that we've been looking into with my son, and just seeing, how it affects him. And as soon as this COVID is done, he's going to the neurological ophthalmologist for sure. That's definitely one of our priorities.
Yeah. I saw in the group, everyone was like CVI. So I went and looked it up, and literally every bullet point, it was everything Briley does, everything. And they said, when they looked in her eye, the back of her eye, like everyone else's should be orange, and hers were like yellow, super pale. There was no pressure from the fluid. That's all they could tell me. So then I started doing, of course, my own research, and I was like, that's gotta be it. So I'm anxious to see what they say, because it hit the nail on the head. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of the times too, I don't think her brain registers what she sees either. So it takes her a minute to say, oh, hey, and that's why she just keeps going back. She can, she knows it. She knows it's there, but it just takes her a few minutes.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to learn about.
So when you guys did the genetic testing, which genetic test did they do? Meaning, like, did they do saliva, blood, or a
Blood?
Blood. Okay.
Blood. And then when we got the results, they tested me and I was negative, and they gave me a kit for my husband, and they said we could do it for him if we decided to have more kids, which we're done. We're not going to have any more. But if he didn't have it and I didn't have it, I think another parent said it was 1 in a billion chance of this happening. It was like, it's the rarest thing ever. And as our genetic doctor said, it's just that one gene. That's it. One tiny gene. That's all it took. Yeah. So yeah, it was just blood, and that's it. But of course, with this disease, it's not the actual disease itself that's the problem, because the keto keeps the lactic level down. And sometimes might get to about a 3, which is fine. 2 to 3 is pretty stable for a PDCD kid, but it's everything that comes with it. We see, I think, 9 specialists, and I mean, you name it, we see them. Neurosurgery, neurology. I had to take her to a GI because we're having a lot of stomach problems. Ophthalmology. She still has a couple tiny little holes in her heart, so we see the heart doctor for that. Hip dysplasia is a big thing. We both of her hips are dislocated, so she's going to have hip surgery to fix those. And we see, of course, ENT for her ears as well, audiology. It's just everything that comes with it. She's in a helmet right now. I don't know if you've seen my Facebook pictures, but we're in a helmet because her head is flat on one side. So we've got, we're going to that. So it's a journey. I feel like I'm a doctor some days, because you're constantly researching and looking, like, could it be this? Could it be that? Because doctors don't know a lot about these diseases. And it is crazy to me that we are in 2021 and they don't know. We're still there.
We always talk about that.
Yeah,
it's insane to me.
I think we've said that, I don't know, 5
probably
times
every podcast.
Yeah. When we got the diagnosis, the doctor printed out a WebMD form from the internet and gave it to me. So when I went home and was researching, I found that on WebMD, the exact same thing. So that told me right there. There's another baby that's in the Nashville area that has Briley's disease. So they knew along the lines of what steps to take. Of course, we're all different. So, but they kind of knew where to go. So that made me feel a lot better. But yeah, they don't know, and you just advocate all the time.
I think one of the positive things that when I hear about your case that you've experienced, is just the fact that you actually have a diagnosis so early on. I mean, that's pretty amazing. We talked to a lot of people. Even my son wasn't diagnosed till he was 2.5, and we have specialists here in San Diego. Yeah. So the fact that she's diagnosed at 8 months old, that's amazing. Yeah. So that's really good.
Yeah. If they hadn't have accidentally done that, we would probably still be waiting for genetic testing, And, the times that we were hospitalized before we got the diagnosis, I truly believe her body was shutting down and her body just was not functioning. She slept all the time. She was miserable. And we're extremely lucky and extremely blessed, because if not for that one mistake, I don't know where we would be, or if she would even be with us, because she was starting to struggle. When she was born, she was 5 pounds, 9 ounces. And in August, she was just barely over 6. So she wasn't gaining weight at all. And at 8 months old, she's only 12 pounds. So it's a struggle for her to even put on weight or even grow. But I don't know where we would be. I told my husband we caught it the earliest we could have, because with y'all's podcast and even going and searching social media at different families, they don't find out till later.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine, 18 months, year, 2 years, we were lucky. It was early. The earliest I think we could have ever have done anything.
Yeah. So do you guys have a Mito doctor then?
No.
No.
No. And I don't think there's one anywhere close to us. They just kind of go off, I think, what they know from the other family, and then just kind of, go from there. And Vanderbilt is expanding their ketogenic clinic. And the keto, of course, stops the seizures, helps with everything going on neurologically. So they know their stuff as far as that. But as far as actual Mito disease, no, they don't know.
You know what I wish? I know it's like hard in 2021. I don't know. Maybe we're on the cusp of this, but I think it would be great if we had Mito doctors that were able to like Zoom with patients. And I know that's hard because they can't be one-on-one. And I'm sure that that's like a big hurdle because you don't want to be sued for suggesting something and then it not working out. And main purpose of not physically seeing them, but hopefully, like, I don't know, in the next couple of years, maybe that's something that in the medical field that they could expand with, where the Mito doctor is talking to your main physician or at least one of the specialists that you have to work with. Because like you said, when we were listing them all off, like we have 10 to 20 to 30 specialists for our children. So I think that would be a huge asset if we could find enough Mito doctors to be able to have like office hours where you could just be one-on-one and talk to a parent. Because I mean, essentially that's all it is. I mean, whenever Angie and I and Andrew would go in, when we would talk to Dr. Haas, I mean, he would look at her, but it was more us telling him everything.
Like gathering information about what's happened in the last year or 6 months or.
Yeah. And I feel like that would help so many more families because like you said, like, I mean, in Kentucky, I'm trying to think. I'm going to look at the map because I know I'm really bad. I need to see distances and see how far states are from each other.
Well, I was listening to one y'all's podcast and y'all were talking about, y'all had Mito doctors in San Diego. And I was like, I wish we had something like that here, and our two choices are either Vanderbilt or Norton's. And I think they're in Indiana, one of the two. So our pediatrician was like, if you ever have problems out of Vanderbilt, send her to Norton, go to this hospital, if they're not going to do what you need them to do, which Vanderbilt's great. They're fine. But we don't have anything like that here. And as you said, she's with me all day. I stay at home. So she's with me all day. And if something's off, I know it. And the good thing about Vanderbilt is we have a portal, so I can write the doctors and they get back to me usually the same day with stuff. So it's really good. And her dietitian too is wonderful. I call or write on the portal, they get right back to me. We get everything solved, but we just don't have anybody here that knows it.
Yeah. I didn't know about the keto diet with lactic acid. I knew everything else that you said, but with that, that's the first time I've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
And I wish I had known that because I would have 1,000% had Angie on that kind of a diet because her lactic acid was, the first time I think it was around 8 and then they went to retest it because they're like, oh, maybe she was stressed out. Maybe when the person was taking her blood, something had happened. And then the second time we got it back, I think it was at like 15 or something like that, 13 or 15. But, and she was breastfed, but when we got her G2, she had to have formula at night. So I wish I had known that because that definitely would have been something I would have at least tried. Because that's also really good. I mean, not 100% of the time, but I've heard from a lot of parents, it's really good for like epilepsy. But it does depend on the kind of epilepsy you have, the kind of seizures that you have. So I'm glad that you guys found that and that is working well. That's good.
Yeah. As soon as we started, you could just see she started to come alive. I got a little grin, and while we were in the hospital, like it completely turned her around. And I didn't imagine it would bring that lactate level down to a 2.2. I could not believe it. And you could just see the instant change. And of course, like today, which they haven't drawn her lactic acid in a while. So I'm anxious to see, we'll do labs next month, but of what it is now, because we've adjusted her ratio a couple different times. But as I said, even if her lactic level was up there, I mean, really the keto diet's the only thing that's going to keep that down. Yeah. So you just you do it, you just hope it works. But we have some days where she's awake a lot and she's kicking and moving, and she feels great. And there's other days where she sleeps most of the day, and I let her sleep and let her rest, you know? Yeah. So that's been the biggest struggle for me, because I had Baylor on a schedule. I knew what he was going to do it and when he was going to do it. Like my life was planned. We didn't go anywhere unless he had already had his nap. And so it is, you know, a little different adjusting. And then of course you have to be careful who you expose, you know, Mito babies around. So we only see a certain few people that I know are safe and tested and don't have to worry. And then, you know, we stay home. We're still on lockdown, you know.
How old is Baylor?
3, he'll be 4 next month.
And did they test him at all for anything?
No. So he is completely fine. Your typical boy. I asked if he would be affected or would his kids be affected. And the genetic doctor said no, that he got his X from me. And so, and where I was negative, he has nothing to worry about. So
how is he handling everything?
You know, he is absolutely obsessed with her. He thinks he's got to be all over her. And I'm like, scoot back so she can see you. Let her breathe. You know, he's so obsessed. But, you know, he doesn't know the difference in her being delayed or that she can't sit up. And, you know, he knows she's special, and he loves her. So, and he was so excited about being a big brother. Could not stand it. Like, and of course he's so jealous. Like he's a daddy's boy. So if dad's got her, he's like, me. Let mom have sister. Because Briley craves physical touch. So in the afternoons when he's home, one of us has got her, because she just loves to be held. That's her thing. She wants somebody to touch her. If she's being touched, she's good. So, and I'm like, you know what? I'll hold you all day if that's what you want, you know. But Baylor's great.
That's sweet. Yeah. And how's your husband doing?
He's good. Of course, he still works. So he's gone during the day, and I have Briley's in actually a really good routine. So we, you know, stay on our routine, and he gets home and loves on her. And of course, I had her last July. So this summer is really going to be a learning curve for us as far as, you know, getting out and her, you know, Briley's boundaries, what she can and can't do. And because I know babies with PDCD sometimes can't regulate their temperature, which we've never had a problem with. So kind of have to watch and kind of see what's going to go on. But yeah, it's starting to warm up here in Kentucky. So we're loving it, getting outside.
That was my next question. So I'm glad you answered it, because I was like, ooh, it's going to be hot and humid.
Yes, I know. Well, and the bad thing is, like, we have her hip surgery scheduled for the end of July, and we're like, she's going to be in double cast. What are we going to do? So she can't hold her head up yet. So we're trying to figure out I would like to push that back to at least when it's colder outside, when you know you're not going to leave, so that, you know, it's easier to manage. Because of course, having a toddler, you know, he's going to want to get out and run and play. And so it does, I don't want to limit him and make him feel a certain type of way because of her. And I don't want him to ever, you know, resent her or feel a certain type of way. So, but I'm excited for it to get warm. We have a vacation set up. We're going to the beach. I'm like, we're going to enjoy ourselves. Baylor's never seen the beach. So I'm like, let's go. Awesome. So we're ready.
Has Briley been under anesthesia before?
Yes, she had to have a sedated CT done to check her ears. This was before she had her diagnosis, and it took her a while to come out of it. She was a little groggy, but since having the diagnosis and she got the shunt, they use a different type of stuff for her. I can't remember what it is that she can't. I've like completely went blank.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask, because mitochondrial disease usually,
yes,
like my son takes forever to come out of anesthesia, and we do not have any procedures done unless, they're really important.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's definitely on the UMDF website. They have an anesthesia protocol paper that you can always print out and look at the different ones. But yeah, it sounds like your doctors are already on top of it.
Vanderbilt knew it before we even went in. They were like, this doesn't need to be in her IV. Yeah. She does not need this. Is it dextrose? It's something like that she cannot have.
Dextrose is the what do I want to call the solution, like the food kind of solution that they give. Yeah. So yeah, that's not necessarily the anesthesia. I can't remember, like there's propofol and there's
these so much.
Yeah.
There's so much. But when we went into that shunt surgery, they knew, that's one of the first things they said. They of course asked what she's allergic to, and I'm like, sugar. So of course they know. But during her shunt surgery, she did fine. She was of course groggy, but she come out of it better than the time before. Yeah.
That's good.
Well, it sounds like you've had quite the journey in your little 8 months.
yeah, I've always heard the first year is the hardest, and especially once you get the diagnosis. And then it's not just the diagnosis, it's everything that comes with it and all the different specialists you see. So it's been a long 8 months, but as I said, I'm thankful we got the diagnosis as early as we did.
Well, it sounds like you guys are doing an amazing job. So
thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We appreciate being able to talk to you and hear your story.
Oh no, thank you guys for having a podcast. I had left an appointment one day and I was like, I wonder on this long drive home if there's a podcast, made for Mito parents. And I found you guys and I was like hooked, because you hear everyone's stories, it makes you not feel as lonely. I mean, you guys know it's hard, and some days are, just horrible. And so just to hear somebody else's story, know where they've been, and know you're not alone. It was awesome. So every time we drive to Nashville, I turn you guys on, and
oh, that's awesome.
I'm
so happy.
Yeah, I love it. So thank you guys for having an outlet so people can share their stories. And I know it's helped me listening to other parents and know that we're all going through it. We're all in it together.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to tell everyone? Is there any advice, or just one foot in front of the other?
One foot in front of the other, day by day, and it does get better. I'm thankful for our good days, and we have our bad days, but everyone has bad days. So it's not anything that, we can't handle. And trust your mom instincts, because it is true. My mom instincts have not failed me yet. So if you think something's wrong, trust yourself. No.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate it. Or we
thank
both
you
appreciate
it.
If you are listening to the Mito podcast, if you have any questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please contact us at I almost said at mitopodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, YouTube, and on Spotify. Thank you again. We really appreciate it.
You guys.